Welcome to GovCon Unscripted, where we dive into the unfiltered stories and strategies from all around the world of government contracting. Join host Chelsea Roberts as she explores how to navigate, thrive, and win in this complex but lucrative industry.
Welcome to GovCon Unscripted. This is your host, Chelsea Roberts. Today's episode is a part of a series that we're calling Success After Service. We're featuring brilliant minds with wisdom to share from throughout the federal ecosystem, folks that served in the military and have transitioned out and found some success after their time, either in federal or military service. I hope that you enjoy this episode and the series, and if you haven't yet, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the podcast with your friends.
All right. Hey, everyone, and welcome back to GovCon Unscripted. I'm your host, Chelsea Roberts, CEO of Collaborative Compositions. And today I've got with us Adam Grant, Business Development and Capture for CoreForce. Adam, who are you and what do you do?
Hi, Chelsea. First and foremost, thank you for having me. What do I do? It's very interesting. I find myself now at this intersection of national security and technology. And so my job ultimately is to try to generate business for my company, CoreForce. Ultimately, I work within a business unit where my job is to go out and secure opportunities and engage with industry as well as government to try to create some meaningful collaborations.
Interesting. I think we've got a lot in common in that area, and we probably do a lot of the same things. But I'm curious, how did you get involved in this?
That's a very good question. I would say a lot of people will often share the highlights. I would say a lot of failures, failing over and over and over and over and again, but just ultimately picking yourself back up. So I initially started out in the military, in the Air Force as an enlisted guy. Was very fortunate to work with a lot of great leaders that led me to commission. I was selected up under a new program called the Senior Leader Enlisted Commissioning Program that allowed me to go to school active duty. Went to school at the University of Arizona, Bear Down Wildcats. Got my undergrad degree in intelligence studies with a minor in Spanish. And so from there, I should have been an intel officer. I passed on being a fighter pilot and I chose acquisition is just because I wanted kind of like a business perspective of the world. And that led me into contracting, which led me to Central Florida here to Cape Canaveral, Patrick Space Force Base. There I was a contracting officer, managed a very large air and space portfolio, did a lot of really cool things. But ultimately, what ended up happening was I found myself at this intersection of what do I do next? Do I continue on or do I look for adventure? And I just completed grad school at Columbia and I decided to just go down a different path. And so it led me on this kind of winding road where I found myself starting out going into early stage investing as a venture capitalist, investing in quite a few companies, doing very well there. And I found myself at this intersection of really not wanting to move, wanting to stay rooted. And so leveraging skill sets and previous experiences, and I started doing more of the business development and the capture thing. And so that led me to my current company, CoreForce, where I'm very, very fortunate, very blessed, have an amazing team, but I've always been a mission-focused type of individual. So I love the mission that we pursue and what we provide to the actual warfighter and the success that we've had. That's kind of how I got there. There's some little hiccups along the way, and I often highlight that just because you have to be prepared for them. So you just have to be ready to kind of just go with the flow of the punches and just get back up over and over again because it's not very easy. I could easily say, oh yeah, this is very easy. I'd be lying to you. I could say it was very grueling, but you build your resiliency and you just keep going after day after day.
Interesting. Now, were most of those hiccups, would you say, on the industry side when you transitioned out of your role in contracting? Did you experience hiccups when you were in that role?
It's very interesting. Inside of my role as a contracting officer, I worked for an amazing commander. And that's one of the highlights of my career. Even as enlisted, all the leaders I worked with were amazing. And that kind of helped guide my path to do a lot of really interesting things. It wasn't necessarily hiccups because it was very fascinating. He's such a smart individual. His name's Colonel Jason Holman. And he could see ahead of what was coming. And we started doing CSOs before CSOs when it was still in beta phase, right? So we launched quite a few of the first commercial CSOs that were spaced coast to coast with both the East and the West launch ranges. And so it was great from that aspect, but you get to that point in your career where you've moved around, you've done so many things. It's okay. you want to stay in the area, or you want a bigger
Yeah.
picture if you have a family or those type of things. And so I was at the intersection of, I want to do something slightly different. I still want to have that impact. I still want to be able to help the warfighter. I just want to see if I can do it from the other side of the table to see if I can accelerate it a little faster. And I'll tell you, the grass isn't always greener, but if you water it, things do work. And I could say that I saw that. Now, as far as industry, some of the hiccups I had there, I'd say were on me, just because really, like, when you're preparing to go in industry, you think, I
Yeah.
was in the Air Force, I was high performing officer, this hot shot guy, thinking, oh yeah, I got it. And it's like, the world has a way of balancing things out and reminding them you don't really have it the exact way that you think you have it. So preparation, I wasn't quite as prepared as I thought I was. And I'd say that to any service member who's preparing to leave. 6 months isn't enough. You need a lot more than that. You need to build a very vast network of individuals. You need to leverage all of the different aspects of your background, the schools you went to, the individuals that you've served with, your interests, your hobbies. You have to find a way to have some sort of connection to someone when you're reaching out. And so learning that, hindsight's 2020, but that type of experience probably would have helped me get to success, or whatever it was I thought was
Sure.
success, a lot quicker.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty common in transition timeframes are not long enough, and they don't provide that level of support that's needed for that outside experience. And I think that there are some programs out there, there's SkillBridge and some other ones that are out there that are well known, that are intended to really help that transition period and kind of ease that stress and the burden that it takes to transition into industry. But I'm not sure that's always the most effective approach. I'm thinking there's probably a variety of experiences within the SkillBridge program, and some are probably better than others. So what sort of tips and tricks would you give to somebody who has maybe a year or so left and they're looking to make that transition?
I would say the first trick or tip that you have is, as a service member, you get LinkedIn Premium for 1 year. You have to that, right? You get
Yeah, that's
one
great.
free year of LinkedIn Premium. You have to use that, just because the ability to do intelligence gathering on
Mhm.
just markets and individuals and backgrounds is so crucial. And that's like one of the building blocks that I would highlight, just because everything else builds off of that, right? Like,
Sure.
we know that if you're looking at targeting an opportunity at a company, you need to look at the company on LinkedIn.
Yep.
But now you have the ability to search maybe all of the individuals who were in the military, right? Because you need an internal reference when you're looking at any opportunity. Just thinking your resume or something is amazing. There are a lot of really smart people out there who
Yep.
have great personalities, who have exemplary backgrounds, and they don't have roles right now.
Yeah.
And so it's a very interesting time to be entering the job market. And so I think because of that, you have to use everything you have. And that LinkedIn Premium gives you access to being able to reach out to others, to reach out to individuals and find them a little bit quicker than what you might have had without it. So I would say the next thing is just looking at whatever your desired role is, understanding why it is you want to go after that role. What does it connect? What is your story? What is your ultimate goal? And then looking at yourself and examining your skill sets. You actually likely qualify for a lot more things than what you traditionally
Yeah.
would assume. You know what I mean? I look at
Yeah.
contracting officers. Typically someone says, okay, yeah, you'll go into maybe a defense company and work in a contract shop.
Right.
And that definitely is a path, for sure. But there's also a world where you could be in business development. There's a world where you could be in capture. There's a world where, in many different other paths where you can go down. And so I think it's really looking at the skill sets that you provide. What do you want to do? And this is where it gets tough. You may not always get to do what you want, but you may be able to rely on a skill set that can get you in the door to then show who you are, to then open those opportunities for you to do what you want. But I would say the big thing is understanding the skill sets that you provide, and then looking beyond what you might think you're able to do. We'll look at some people might say personnelists. Oh, they just do administrative work. There's so many other different angles that you could take where you're still actually doing some of those things, but the types of companies, the types of industries where you get just such a different or unique experience, you might not have considered it. And so I think just looking at yourself and examining, being very real with yourself, listing everything out. I'm a big write it down on a piece of paper and let me just look at it and read it out loud, and then go back through there and, okay, I think I can go this path. I think the next thing, honestly, is you have to have champions.
Yep.
I'm a big 2 to 3 type of person. And these are people who, when it's rough, you can call them. And when it's good, you can call them. But they're not going to blow smoke and, oh, yeah, it's all going to be amazing. They're going to keep it honest with you, because the reality is I personally would much rather just be the direct, listen, That was a great approach. Probably shouldn't do it that way again. And I had quite a few of those. That's a really good idea, but it's not going to work. But you tried it. That's great. What did we learn? How can we go back? How can we reiterate? And how can we get this back on path? So you need that group of individuals. And in the military, you're so used to just being such a wingman concept, right? That camaraderie. But sometimes when you go out into the traditional commercial market, it's not necessarily the same. And everyone has different experiences. But I think having a good foundation of individuals behind you is really crucial. You have to become your best advocate. No one wants you to win more than you want to win. And that could look differently, right? Maybe it's sharing just a couple thoughts on things related to your industry. Sometimes it may go positive. Maybe others don't like it, but people value those who have opinions and are willing to share their opinions and articulate them in a manner. And if you do it enough, you can likely become some sort of subject matter expert and you can start sharing. I'm a big proponent of you have to market yourself. No one else is going to market you. And the reality is it's such a big world that people may not ever get to hear your voice if you don't share it. This is a big one for me. This next one.
Yeah.
If you send messages and you don't get responses, send them again. And if you don't get responses, send them again. And then don't take it personal. That's a personal for me. So I sent 3 messages and they looked at them and didn't even respond. We also have to, like in this world that we live in, everyone is going through something. And the person on the other side has a family, has a job, has a boss, and they saw your message and then they got a message saying something was going on with their kids and they had to go grab one of their kids. Now they forgot about your message. Now they got back. Now their bosses messaged them. Your message just got pushed down. It's nothing personal. It's just the way life works. And so I think that understanding just, you're going to have to continue to follow up. And then there's a good probability of, oh, whoops, I missed you 4 times. I'm so sorry. Let me have that conversation. Now you have some buy-in. And to be honest with you, now the individual feels, you know what, I need to make this a great interaction because they reached out to me so many times. And so I found that to be something that was like really big because I'm like, man, I've sent 5 messages. They read them and they didn't respond. They have a life too.
Yeah, it could be the 6th. You never know. They get on and they're like, wow, okay, I have really done myself no favors here in just ignoring this. And you never know. It's hard to understand like where those messages go, when they come through. And like you said, these are people on the other end. So it's like they might have been pulled into an urgent meeting or they might have been in the pickup line for school and they were just trying to doom scroll and they saw your message, but they didn't really want to have to put the effort in to respond. And that's nothing against you at all. It's not a slight on you, your skill sets or anything like that. It's just really the fact that just like you, they are probably doing something else in the process of going through reading their messages and scrolling, and they've got competing priorities. So I think that's absolutely critical to remember and give folks some grace. Like you are not the most important person in everybody's life, right?
I'll give you a good example. So after completing grad school, I was exposed to early stage investing. I had never really been exposed to it, but when you look at the way we deploy in the government space, there's like some transparency where it's okay, this is similar in ways. And I love the idea of having to search and to try to find the next thing or to look at where markets are going or what we might need. I was really just caught up in that. And so I started doing my research and it's, hey, to get into early stage investing, if you're in out of market, if you're not in San Francisco and you're not in New York, it's really challenging. There are a couple other smaller markets, but it's really challenging. And so like I set out this plan, I reached out to 100 people, 100 different investors on LinkedIn. Sent 100 and I thought to myself, okay, if I reach out to 100, maybe I'll get like 20 to respond.
Yeah.
Realistically, I got 10 to respond.
Wow.
I set up calls with those 10. The crazy part about it is after those calls, of those 10, maybe 5 actually had follow-on conversations and we actually ended up networking. And luckily at that time, I reached out to one. Her name was Melanie Strong. Melanie was an executive at Nike and she was just preparing to go into investing as well, just from a different perspective, going into more of a direct leadership role. And so we connected and we had very similar interests of what type of spaces we wanted to invest in. And then from there, we leveraged it. I would reach out, share thoughts, and she'd reach out, share thoughts and different perspectives. And this is how I broke my way on the end of, hey, what about this program? Hey, do this investor program. This will give you this experience. And it helped me chart a path, but it all started from a message on LinkedIn. And I sent out 100 messages. So that's the thing. It's like, I know it can be discouraging at times, but it's just more so of shoot or shoot. You just have to keep getting your shots up and you just can't take it personal. You just have to just let it roll off of you. So that's my thoughts, like shoot or shoot, just keep shooting. What's the worst that can happen? They don't read your message. Okay, no big deal. Like, what's the worst that can happen? They read it and maybe they say, hey, sorry, I don't have time. Okay, guess what? That's one person cross off the list and move on to the next.
Yep. That's less wasted time.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love that. Now I'm curious. So from your experience in contracting, from the industry side, we all see contracting officers and we try to get a hold of them. We try to get in touch with them. But then there's some rules within like FAR-based contracting, right? That kind of limits that communication. It's for a purpose. There's obviously a reason there, but there's some limits there that create some blind spots for industry and some, I think, typically cautionary steps for government. And so I'm curious, when you were still like as working in contracts, were you comfortable having those conversations with folks that were in industry when you were thinking about making that transition? Or did it feel, oh, I better not talk to this company because we contract with them. I better not talk to this company because there could be some like conflict that could potentially arise and I could be in trouble? Are those thoughts that crossed your mind?
I think the cool part, so the unique part for me was when I initially left active duty, I went straight into early stage investing. So it kind of gave me like that buffer period and gap. I had never really been like too nervous of having conversations just because I'm a very transparent person. I'm the type of person, hey, this is what I have, or this is what I've done, or if we can't chat, we can't chat. And I think when you kind of lead with those things, people understand right from the get-go, hey, there isn't any sort of intent, you know what I mean? That shouldn't be garnered from this. So that's like my first thing. So it wasn't, but also I've always done my own path. And that, and so because of that, I didn't want to take that traditional route right away. I really wanted to see. I know my thoughts were like really big, I'll be honest. I think of, you look at Boeing and Lockheed and such the large contractors, and I thought, I want to go find the next one. I want to go find them. I want to find the next early stage company that's creating whatever drone technology or whatever type of LiDAR or whatever type of directed energy technology that hasn't yet been found. And I could do that through investing, and then I can invest in them. And then as they grow, I can always have a piece of their story. And so still connected, but I wanted to take a slightly different approach to it. And that was kind of like my thoughts. But again, everybody has their journey and you kind of go down your path. Sometimes it stays that way. Sometimes it adjusts and you just kind of have to pivot. But again, I go back to my network of individuals that I've always stayed in contact with that have been like that inner circle of, that's not going to work out.
Yeah.
Or that's a good one. And look, I've taken it both ways. That's not going to work out. Okay, you know what? You're right. Let me pivot. Or I'm like, I don't believe that. And sometimes it's worked. And sometimes you just kind of tip yourself back up. And you're like, you know, you were right. I had to see it for myself. You told me the stove was hot and I kind of had to touch it and get burned a little just to experience that. And sometimes those are great experiences that you can now share with others. More importantly, kind of builds your character and you grow a little bit more respect for those who are truly looking out for you.
It gives you a little grit, resilience, and persistence. And it really teaches you that you have to keep going and you have to pick yourself up and continue on, because ultimately you can waste so much time, so much energy and effort and emotion on spinning wheels on things that really have no traction to be gained. So I think that's absolutely a fantastic point, is like when it's time to move on, it's time to move on, and you can't just sit there and ruminate over it, right? I think that's important. Now, I'm curious with your venture work. So it seems like you put yourself on the other side of that conversation, and you then got the power to say, no, we're not going to invest in you, or no, we don't really feel like it's a fit, right? And I'm sure you've probably seen some founders with some pretty sad faces on after conversations. So I'm curious, like, how did that feel for you? And what was it like going through and being selective of the companies that you're going to invest in? It's your money, so you obviously have to be looking out for that as much as you can. But also, I'm sure there's a ton of great, really investable small companies that probably all want a chunk of it. So how do you determine what you're going to invest in, and what's the conversation that's had with those early stage investors?
It was a very humbling and eye-opening experience. So you raise this capital from limited partners or high worth individuals. So you get this capital, you raise it. You have a thesis of what's kind of guiding your investments, what niches, what areas. And the reality is, if you have 100 calls, only 7 to 10 of those are going to be worth like follow-on conversations. And you typically know it within the first 3 minutes. Within like the first 3 minutes of the call, you can already tell, even if it's great. It can be great, but you don't hear the confidence in them. It can be great, but the teammates, you can kind of sense there's some tension there. It's not going to work. There's so many different little things that even away from the company itself, just the people themselves, right? Because you're ultimately investing, you're ultimately making a bet at those early stages that they're going to be able to be resilient. and to push through some of the roughest times
Right.
together and to continue to get hit, to push. And you have to look for certain indicators. I'm a big fan of those who have had to go through some sort of trials and tribulations early on to kind of look for indicators. How did they overcome those things? Typically, they're
Okay.
likely going to fall back on those steps again. But it was a very
Mhm.
systematic approach, though. Hey, if the market isn't $10 billion or more, we didn't typically look at it just because to return the investment, it's just going to take a lot more, right? $10 billion
Right.
market, they can target 1%, $100 million. If they can do that repeatedly over a couple of years, we can now get them to an exit, which ultimately you receive the returns. But chatting with founders every day was very humbling because you're chatting with such bright, unique individuals who
Yeah.
have stories, who I think building a company is one of the toughest things that you can do.
Yeah.
I think I always hesitate with writing and sharing my writings. And I could be humble. I think I'm a decent writer, but most would probably say I'm a pretty good writer, but I don't like sharing my writings. It's something about it coming from your head and you putting it out in the world and now others know. And so I think of the same concept of like when people are building companies, it's like they have this thought, they saw this problem or this need. Now they're building it, forming it. Now they have to go to people who they don't even know
Yeah.
and pitch it and tell them why it's great. And they're going to tear it apart. Their whole job is to tear it, say, hey, this is why it's not great, or hey, this is what you should have done. Very
Right.
humbling to see individuals walk up to you and have these conversations. But I think for me, I always wanted to be a little bit different. There are just some blatant no's, but I also loved redirects.
Okay.
This isn't working necessarily right now, maybe in 6 to 8 months, or hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z. Not just necessarily a no. It's easy to tell somebody no. I think it's a little bit more challenging to provide some sort of feedback that's valuable, right? And I think you have to do it quickly instead of stringing them along. Most companies would tell you have calls with investors and you get strung along. Fourth call, they tell you no. I prefer to tell you no on the first call. Let's save you time. But I'm always a firm believer, though, of a no doesn't mean no forever. It could just be a no right now. You need more traction. You
Sure.
need to be able to show that you've built just a little bit more. You need to be able to show that you understand your markets just a little bit more. And later on down the road, you have these kind of moments where, oh, you figure these things out. Okay, now it clicks. It might make sense of some sort. Or maybe I know someone who their appetite's a little bit different and they can accept those type of risk and they're willing to pursue. But because a lot of the companies that I was looking at were in the national security defense space, that dual use technology, you'll hear that phrasing a lot. One of the things was also like, hey, I could also help them of, hey, I know you don't have this type of revenue. Hey, you should look at these type of opportunities. Maybe it's SIBRs, maybe it's SETRs, right? You should look at these type of opportunities as well to get you something in the pipeline, just to start building up what that pipeline for growth might look like. And that also helps as well. And so multiple conversations, again, it's a very interesting intersection because
Yeah.
you're just on the other side of the table. Investors are very powerful. People will say that they aren't, but they're very powerful individuals. I just think when you have that type of opportunity or that type of power, you have to be very cautious. And it's no different than being in charge of individuals, right? You have to take it for what it is, not abuse it, and try to do your best that you can to be a great steward. So that was my approach. And I was able to make quite a few great investments. I did this investor accelerator initially called VU
Okay.
Ventures, Venture University with VU Venture Partners. And it was really cool. It was like an accelerator where they took 20 individuals or so and they taught you how to be an investor over a 3 to 6 month time period. And really cool. I was in their 10th cohort, I believe. And I think they're now at about 53 cohorts, but it's very selective. If you're entered in, then they take you from day one all the way to, hey, we can do financial models from what your call should look like, the type of things you should be looking for, how you actually find companies. And they run you through everything. You do it in a cohort type of environment, which I think is great just because you have others to lean on when it gets rough. And then from there, they help you land your first investor role. And so that opened the door just because now, okay, I'm starting off with a network, right? I have other individuals who've been through this with me. I've met some individuals on LinkedIn. I understand because understanding the lingo and the language is a big thing.
Yeah.
That's big right off the back, right? So now I understand, okay, now what separates me? What's my it factor? What's my view? What do I see differently than everyone else? And then start trying to leverage that as well. And so from there, I landed with Overlook Ventures. And Overlooked had this thesis of investing in just overlooked founders who don't come from traditional markets, so that San Francisco, that New York, maybe they don't come from traditional backgrounds. And so within that space, I looked at a lot of national security stuff, a lot of health technology stuff, and some climate technology as well. So I thought it was a great experience. I was able to help raise the first $20 million of the fund with the founders, which was a great experience as well. Brought on our first institutional investor in Bank of America, which is big. And so I think all of it just goes back to just being ready and then just taking it. It's challenging. You have these calls and everyone's not the nicest, right? So you just have to be prepared. And I go back in the military. We have all types of leaders. I've worked for nice leaders. I've worked for leaders who are a little rigid, a little rough around the edges, but at the end of the day, they all get the job done, right? So flexibility is the key is what we say. Flexibility is the key to air power. That's what we used to say. And so I kind of keep that same mindset and mantra.
I like that. It reminds me of a Marine Corps saying that I hear pretty often, which is Semper Gumby. Always stay flexible, right? And make sure you can adapt and pivot when needed. And it sounds like you've done a great job of that and really transitioning when it felt right, when that natural lead to your next role was available and something that you were interested in. I'm curious, what are you seeing these days in terms of business development, in terms of capture, in the work that you're doing for Core Force? What types of things are you seeing change that are either unexpected or just different than what you might have expected to see when you were on the government side?
Two-part. I think with capture, I think is very interesting as likely if they're in this space, they've gone through the Shipley business development and capture program. So they understand that type of systematic approach. I find it interesting. I think there's a world where there's a future where you're able to utilize your voice, your view, just kind of like I shared earlier on spaces to do capture, tradition, to ping, to kind of, I love the fish. I would like to say to kind of chum the water a little, right? Using your voice to gain a little bit more credibility and attention, and then utilizing that to generate relationships that might not have been created before. And ultimately those relationships allowing you to pursue opportunities in some sort of partnership. So when I look at it as I didn't expect quite as much consolidation in the use of all of the different vehicles, which I think is great. I'll be honest with you. When we were doing CSOs early on, it was supposed to be so fast and we still weren't doing it as fast. And that was very frustrating for me.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating for me for you to tell me this is supposed to make me move at lightning speed and I still feel like I'm moving slow like that. So to see the consolidation, it shows, hey, it's definitely going on the right path. And so that's one thing that I don't want to sound negative, but I didn't think it would kind of take up as much as you look at GSA right now with their masses, with their alliance, and you're looking now, okay, that's a big one where there's so much now. We know when you consolidate and put everything in one area, there are some limitations, right? It becomes very competitive on how you get access to those opportunities.
Yeah.
And that's where I go back to, and I can't say that these are just Adam's thoughts, but I think there's a world where utilizing the ability of the voice to now kind of gather those in who maybe are like-minded and utilizing to kind of create partnerships against some of the traditional routes, which I still think you're going to have to go to events, but what are the events worth going to, right?
Yes.
What are the events where your crowd or your target audience or your buyers, like, where are they at? I still think there's definitely room for that. I still think there's room for sharing thoughts. And then from those sharing of thoughts, creating opportunities. I'm in the early stages of that. I know I need to do more of it. I love being behind the scenes, but the reality is I need to start doing more forward facing and kind of doing that. But I would say that approach, as well as, man, just the consolidation of the vehicles, is really fascinating. I honestly, when we were doing CSO, I didn't think it was going to, I knew because my boss told me to do it. He's such a brilliant individual. And I can't say that about all the bosses I've ever had. Like, it's nothing against them. It's just some people are more by the textbook.
Oh, sure.
Brilliant. So he was like, this is the future. He was like, I can promise you that. And look, I didn't think it was going to be as big as it is now, where you look at now, everyone has CSO everywhere. Yeah. And so I go back to 2000 when we did our first one, right? And we were labeling them under pitch days, right? And so the pitch day was like the paint on the car, right? But CSO behind the scenes was what allowed them afterwards to go behind the doors and figure this out. And so I didn't think it was going to accelerate as much as it did, but it's great that it is. Yeah. But I still go back to, just because we have the vehicle and we have it, we have to fully know it inside and out and actually allow to be free to execute off of it in a very quick manner and assume the risk and understand that there will be failures along the way, but If you look at it from the investing standpoint, you spread that cast net out. You should expect to take on some sort of failure, but the reality, the successes will likely overshadow those. So that's like a couple one, but I didn't think the CSOs were going to be as big as they are now. Now they're everywhere. And back in my mind, I always would think, yeah, we did something big at Patrick's Space Force Base. I think I was a lieutenant at the time too, so that was always pretty cool too.
Yeah.
Just to get tossed something like that, and it's take it and go with it. Be great.
Yeah, that's incredible. Being one of the leaders at the forefront of ultimately doing something that has expanded so rapidly and so broadly across agencies. I can't go a day without seeing another CSO from somebody else. And I have to hope that there's some training, there's some guidance that's going along with these, because I think that if not, if it's just everybody doing a CSO the way that they do their CSOs, you're going to end up with something a little bit more fragmented and a little less consistent than what you would probably want to get out of it. But like the experience that you've gotten working on those from the government side is just invaluable when it comes to trying to pursue those in other agencies, trying to pursue them with your companies. You know, the ins and the outs and the ups and the downs and all of the different turns that CSO can take. And better yet, you've executed those from the government side. So you understand all of the oversight, all of the contemplation and the thought, and what levels of risk are likely to be appetizing to the government in that situation. So that's all firsthand experience and knowledge that so few people have right now. So I want to pick your brain personally, and I'm sure everybody that's going to be listening to this is going to be desperate to pick your brain about how they can do CSOs more effectively, how they can plan and bring them into their future planning, and how they can incorporate them into their strategies going forward. And I think that's a really interesting sort of for contracting. So I think that's a fantastic experience to have, first of all. And it's also just an incredibly valuable asset to bring to industry. So I'm glad that you're working with industry now. And I'm glad because I've got somebody that I can reach out to and say, hey, this is kind of weird over here with the Army. You think you're doing it right? Or do you think that there's something we could do differently? There's all sorts of questions and conversations we can have about that. For folks that are curious about it, and that for folks that are either transitioning and they want some more lessons, or folks that are trying to figure out their way around this new CSO maze, how can they get a hold of you if they want to talk more?
They can find me on LinkedIn. You have to search Adam C. Grant, right? Because
Yeah.
there's another Adam Grant who writes books and
Darn, I
psychology.
hate that.
Long story. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of funny. I'll get emails all the time like, hey, I read your book and it's the wrong Adam. Not the wrong Adam Grant, right? But they can definitely find me if they just type in Adam C. Grant on LinkedIn. There's a quote, one of the individuals, his name is Andrew, who was training us in the investor accelerator I went through. And he was like, it takes nothing to take 15 minutes. And I was like, I've kind of always tried to keep that approach. A lot of people have taken 15-minute calls with me. Yeah. And so I'm always open to hop on a quick 15-minute call. I'm a very transparent person. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm going to be very polite about it. I'm not going to lie to you. I'll definitely give you my perspective. Maybe take this approach, maybe take that approach. You take it with a grain of salt, but always willing to hop on a 15-minute call with someone to try and help them, just because the reality is when you're going down these different paths, it can definitely seem very dark and very lonely. And so sometimes if you have another voice in the back of your head that's kind of helping you, it gives you just a little bit extra oomph to keep pushing.
I love that. That's fantastic. And we will get all of that info, including the right link to your LinkedIn page, into the show notes for everybody so they can reach out independently. And this has been a fantastic conversation, super full of insights, wisdom, feedback, and just some tips and tricks that I'm sure folks are going to be able to leverage as they think about their transition out, or they think about their founder's journey. All sorts of great information in here. So I really appreciate you hopping on the show today. It's been great talking with you.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening this week to GovCon Unscripted. Don't forget to share, subscribe, and do your part. Leave a heart. If you feel like leaving a comment, we'll engage with you on Spotify, YouTube, and wherever else we can see your comments. And we look forward to having you here next week for next week's episode of GovCon Unscripted. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of GovCon Unscripted with your host, Chelsea Roberts. Do you have a GovCon story or need guidance in government contracting? Connect with Chelsea on LinkedIn to be a guest on the show or to enhance your business strategy. Don't forget, your network is your net worth. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with your growing GovCon community.